Okay. One Piece chapter 1090. It looks like Luffy's decision to save Rob Lucci, while it did allow them to actually survive the battle that was in front of them, it did bite them in the ass. You got to give Rob Lucci some credit here. He was able to take advantage of the situation and actually turn it to his favor. Because the whole time that he's been held captive, the guy has been thinking a few steps ahead, and he's been secretly in communication with Kizaru. That is good. That is actually very clever. And I like how Oda in the chapter does kind of hint, because even Kaku's like, wait a second, man, like, what are you doing? What are you saying? And it's one of those things where I like that Rob Lucci thought that far ahead, that he realized there are going to be some things he needed to keep from those who are underneath him for their actual safety. So I thought that was kind of cool. But I will say, though, this chapter had a few moments where I banged my head against the wall, and I also fell down laughing, in particular when Nami is just going to town on York. But also when Luffy both makes me bang my head against the wall as well as laugh, because Luffy just grabs the transponder snail and he's like, hey, this is Monkey D. Luffy here, the man who'll be king of the pirates. It's like, oh my God. Every single time this dude opens up his mouth, he says some that he should not say. Like, it never fails to amaze me. Just when I think that Luffy pulled a corner, I'm just praising the Straw Hats in the last chapter. I'm like, hey, yeah, you know, when Luffy is surrounded by people around him, Luffy's an actual threat, Luffy is smart, blah, 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 blah. Luffy's like, hey, we have Dr. Vegapunk. If you value York's life, you're going to move your ships away from the shore. And as Morgan's listening, Vivi's freaking out, and the elders, they're completely calm and collected, and they're assessing the situation. And they're like, are you Straw Hat Luffy? Who is still there? And he's like, oh, well, some folks are injured. And Nico Robin immediately starts saying, Luffy, no. And she cuts off the transponder snail. And one of the elders just says, wait a second, that's a woman's voice. That's Nico Robin. And it's like, okay, they were going after Nico Robin because of what happened with the Void Century in terms of the research that was done. And you have Nami just doing the face palm. She's like, I can't believe this idiot. Nico Robin has to explain to him exactly where he messed up. She says, information is a weapon. You don't hand your enemies weapons. And basically, they went from bluffing in the last chapter to now the five elders, they have the information. They know full on that Luffy was bluffing at this point, that York was never in actual danger. And when Luffy says, well, that's okay, I made a big oops, but they're going to move their ships now, Usopp has to shout at him and says, you idiot, do you really think they're that stupid? They saw through this whole thing. And as this is going on, that's where Saturn starts putting the pieces together. He says, okay, we got a few things we need to do. We need to get York's safety. So York is still, at least on surface level, going to be made into a Celestial Dragon. The second thing is that the Punk Wrecker's brain, that's got to get taken. And the power plant that makes the Mother Flame, everything else is going to get destroyed once they start cutting loose at this point. And when one of the Navy officers is like, hey, you know, Rob Lucci's crew's still in there, he's like, look, I'm speaking in the worst case scenario, but those three things, those are our top priority. And Saturn just shows more that cold-hearted calculation he has. He says, human lives, you shouldn't think of them as nothing else but actual insects. They're always going to breed more in order to make up for any loss that they sustain. And that's a cold way of viewing humanity. That's a cold way of viewing humanity. At the end of the day, like, part of the reason why we are here is to pass on genetics. That is indisputable, but it's one of those things to hear it put in those terms. To have humans compared to insects that breed, that is cold. And when York starts running her mouth saying, you know, do you know what you've done? I got an agreement with the five elders. If you hurt me, this island's going to go up in the smoke just like Nico Robin's island. Then we find out that Nami just wails on a York. And when York says, I'm going to report you to the five elders, Nami says, go ahead, do it. Make my day. And it's one of those things, like, I like that you do see the Straw Hat standing up for Nico Robin at this point, and you continue to see Nami just beating on her, to the point where Zoro has to step in and actually grab hold of her hand. Luffy, no care in the world. Luffy is just in one of those situations where he and Bonnie, they're eating. And the whole time, going unnoticed in the background is Rob Lucci. And he's giving a survey of the situation saying, all these small things. He's talking to himself, and the whole time that he's talking to himself, he's actually relaying the information. And what we find out is that all the Seraphim, they've been essentially captured inside of the bubble balls, and those bubble balls prevent them from using any of the powers that they have. And we get the flashback where we see Luffy, he's interacting with the Boa Hancock clone S-Snake, and just like the real Boa Hancock, she can't turn down Luffy. She's blushing at the sight of him. Luffy's saying, you gotta undo this. These are my friends. You're the only ones who can actually undo this. Save my friends. Turn them back to normal. Boa Hancock's clone can't actually turn down the request because she, like the real Boa Hancock, is in love with them. You got a moment where even Jinbe's like, man, you know, that's just like the real Boa Hancock. And you got this dude, Vegapunk, like, man, it's so interesting the types of things get transferred through blood. And when Luffy thanks her for everything she's done, Boa Hancock's clone, just like the real Boa, is like, oh, did he just say he's in love with me? Completely delusional like the real Boa Hancock. And what I like is that as they start talking, York is like, you'll never figure out the actual clone, the code in order to get the barrier to come down. And that's essentially where the Vegapunk's like, okay, challenge accepted. You don't challenge us with something like that. These are a collection of the smartest people in the world, so they're going to come up with it. And Vegapunk basically looks over and says, Nami, you're the navigator, right? So let me know where that log post is pointing at. And because they still have one arrow that's working from Wano, we get told that the next island they're going to is Elbaf. So looks like they're actually going to cross paths with Shanks at some point. Luffy and Usopp, both of them get super excited because of what happened in the past. But it's one of those things where we get told, okay, well, it's a good thing that you're here in the Labo phase because we can at least take off through the air, but once we get outside of the egghead airspace, you're going to fall back to the Earth. And Frankie's like, yo, don't even worry about that, fam. So this ship that we got, we'll use the 1,000 Sunnies coupe de burst, and we're going to fly even further. We can go a whole kilometer away before anyone catches on to us really, really quick. And when Vegapunk hears this, he's like, yo, you can go that far? How can you do that? And Frankie's like, yo, son, you ain't gonna believe this. It actually operates off of cola. And as soon as Vegapunk hears this, he just falls out. He's like, oh my God, I never thought anything like this. And it's one of those things, like, I absolutely guarantee you the Straw Hats are getting upgrades, in particular Frankie. There's no way you got this bromance between Vegapunk and Frankie brewing, where Frankie's actually impressing this dude and it don't lead to something greater. However, it's not all like Straw Hats interacting and you got the Straw Hats making you laugh and everything, because as this is going on, Kizaru, he's finally finished eating his ramen. Kizaru is such a troll, man. Like, the whole time that all this stuff's going on, this man's eating his ramen. He finished eating his ramen and he's talking to Saturn. He's like, look, man, a good friend of mine is on that island. I want to do this by the book. Saturn's like, yo, time is of the essence. He's like, hey, Rob Lucci gave me all the information I need. Time is of the essence. I can move at the speed of light. Don't even worry about it. And essentially what we see is that as the Straw Hats are making their preparations, Sentomaru and Kizaru end up engaging in battle at this point. And the moment that Kizaru ends up fighting, Luffy freaks out and he says, someone's here. Someone strong is here. And I like that we're getting that full-on rematch from Sayobodi, because Kizaru dusted the Straw Hat. So I like that we're seeing this. We're going to actually see where Luffy stacks up against a real Admiral, man. This is going to be really, really good to see. Gear 5 Luffy versus Rob Lucci and versus Kizaru. You can go ahead and put that one in the bank. That's me, my chapter question, you guys. Do you guys think, as of where Luffy is right now, now that he's eaten, now that he's recharged, can Luffy actually defeat Kizaru in a one-on-one battle? But so always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.